Updates and patching. I know for everyone who went to college to go into become a DBA or IT management or chief operating officer or CTO or whatever your background is that's in charge of figuring these things out, nobody told you in school that you're going to be up every other Saturday night installing updates to your operating system, to Windows, to patching, things like that. And it's tough to schedule a lot of that. And what it comes down to is that a lot of people end up not keeping up to date on their patches. And I'm going to ask the question right now. Do you know what version of SQL Server you're running? And how long is that current version of SQL Server going to be supported? Okay, so right now it's 2024. Microsoft typically supports the version of SQL Server for about 10 years. Exact dates you can go look up online. But right now, I believe SQL 2014 is about to come to end of life. SQL 2012 is definitely past end of life and no longer supported. And if you're on SQL Server 2016, which doesn't even seem like that long ago, it's only a couple years away from no longer being supported. So you want to look at how are you going to get to those newer versions, and part of it is, why do you need to get there? Well, if Microsoft stops supporting it, you might say, well, gee, I've never had to call them for anything. What's the big deal there? Well, the fact is they're going to stop doing security patches. They stop doing updates and things like that. And the older the version gets and the bigger jump you have to make, the more challenging it is. So are you keeping up on those updates? Are you keeping your SQL Server up to a fairly current version? Worked with a couple of clients that were running SQL Server 2000, and just about a year ago, and this is 2024 right now, they were stuck on 2000, and at the time we decided to not work with them any longer, they were still running SQL Server 2000, and there wasn't a lot we could do to change that for them. They were fine with it. All their stuff just ran. But they were so far out of date on patches, they were so far out of date on updates, they probably had security holes that I'm sure they had security holes that could have been exploited, but they got lucky, and they never got hit with that, I guess. But what are you doing with your updates? And keeping track of those is important. And then the next is, what about patches? So first we've got the major version upgrades, but what about your patches? And typically Microsoft comes out with monthly patches for the latest version of SQL Server for a couple of years, and then they switch to about quarterly patches after that. Are you keeping up on all of those? Are you applying them, or are you running 6-year-old version of SQL Server that's never been patched and has lots of security holes in it? We want to make sure we keep up on those. And those are things that, they'll take the system down. There's risk it may be down for a couple of hours, or it might be 20 minutes, depending on how long it's been since you last did updates or how long it takes to get those Windows updates applied. I guess, Windows updates is the other thing too. You always want to make sure your SQL servers are up to date there. So are those being maintained? Are they being kept up? And what happens if an update goes bad? This is one of those, my team and I have done thousands of SQL Server updates, patches, and occasionally something goes bad. Occasionally the upgrade doesn't work quite the way you were expecting because of something in the process. What are you going to do, and what's your rollback? That's a super important thing to consider. Whenever you're doing either just a update patch, like you get monthly or quarterly, or a full SQL Server version upgrade, you always want to make sure you have a good rollback plan. If something goes wrong and this completely tanks the SQL Server, how do I roll it back and get it to something I can use before start of business tomorrow, or before my downtime window is over? Those are good things to keep in mind. The other thing is, what do you want to be doing on a Saturday night? Me, I'd love to watch a movie and go to bed, I guess. But what happens is that it might not be a Saturday night, it might be a Tuesday night, or it might be a Sunday night, depending on your business needs. But a lot of people end up having to do those SQL Server updates and patches after hours, and sometimes after very late in the night. And is that something that you want to be doing, either doing SQL Server updates or patches, or Windows servers updates or patches? You got to do them to stay secure, but is that what you want to be doing on a Saturday night? And that's where we can look and say, can we help? And Stedman Solutions can help with that, absolutely. We'll get into more detail in a minute. But we have a team and we schedule that, and it might be that one person does updates for 4 or 5 different clients over in one weekend and somebody else does them on the next weekend. We can help with that, and that's just part of what we do.